A quick disclaimer before we begin. Everything in this video is alleged. I didn't want to have to repeat the word allegedly a million times every single sentence in this video, which is already pretty long, so please know going into this video that all of the information is what I was able to gather to the best of my ability. This video relies on research from the NaNoWriMo forums and the subreddit and people's blogs, plus many interviews with former NaNoWriMo volunteers and employees, which you will see in this video in a moment. This video will deal with some heavy topics related to especially the harming and exploitation of minors. Nothing explicit is going to be shown on screen though, and this video will also discuss topics like racism and ableism, so as you're going through, just keep in mind viewer discretion is advised.
This is gonna sound completely batshit, okay? Like, I'm warning you right now, it is going to sound unhinged.
One of my best friends actually had texted me and they said, hey, like, have you heard about this NaNoWriMo drama? And I was like, no, what are you talking about?
But literally the first reaction didn't even have the luxury of being, oh my god, these poor kids. The first reaction was record scratch, holy moly, there are kids?
Because they were vicious, they were trying to invalidate people that brought this up.
I'm blind, I'm from the global south. I am under the poverty line.
Like, they were policing, and this is something that they continue to do, they were policing their sponsor's reputation. And they were sacrificing their own reputation for some random company.
Not, like I said, I'm not really comfortable being the fighter type, but sometimes I have to.
It has turned itself into something that is actively anti-creative, and I just don't see why it should exist anymore.
And when she's the one in charge, it's not actually bullying at that point, it is abuse.
You know, it just was this hive mind of don't talk about it, don't tell anyone about it.
They keep pointing the finger at this one very mysterious, very dramatic figure called Mod X.
That's when things started really escalating.
Then apparently the actual teens were reporting this person over and over again.
I should mention that back in May and between then and November, people did contact the FBI too.
I'm trying to keep this all straight. I didn't even know anyone involved in this situation was dead. Like,
I'm so sorry.
Like they kept, and then it kind of turned into like this really big cover-up that was frankly very easy to do because the website was so hard to navigate.
There's a lot, and I just don't think they had the training to know where the line was.
You know, it went very quickly from, oh, well, my first experience doing a real, life writing wasn't the best, but whatever, to, oh my god, I'm so glad I didn't get groomed.
It got all of this flack for their like unprompted AI response and not for all of the child grooming allegations.
I thought the same thing.
Every time you think they can't do anything more wrong, they do.
It was very cowardly.
Yeah.
This is not what a human being should do.
There's a whole rabbit hole around this. Are you sure you want to hear this one?
I do, yes.
Okay.
This is a really difficult video to make. It is never easy to talk about the decline of something that you love, but here we are. It is now 2024, meaning that this year is the 25th anniversary of a beloved writing challenge called NaNoWriMo. Back in 1999, a writer named Chris Beatty founded a challenge called National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo for short. The idea was simple. Writers would challenge themselves to write a full novel draft in 30 days, with this particular challenge taking place annually in November. The goal was to write at least 50,000 words during the course of that month, and with the challenge motivating you, you could also team up with other writers to encourage each other, give each other feedback, help keep each other motivated, it, all of that. The structure of NaNoWriMo can be confusing to some writers because NaNoWriMo, when it's said, often refers to two completely different things. First, there is NaNoWriMo, the writing challenge, and second, there is NaNoWriMo, which is the officially registered brand name of the organization, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. So there can be a bit of confusion when we talk about NaNoWriMo, the event, versus NaNoWriMo, the official organization. For example, I have done NaNoWriMo in my life, I think 4 times now. My novel Sculpt Yourself, which as of the other day has a new cover, so that's kind of cool. That's a book I released back in 2018 after completing it as a NaNoWriMo project. Cancel Sean Boston, the book that I co-wrote with my buddy Arcade Gold, that was also a NaNoWriMo project that we did together. In 2023, I decided to double the usual NaNoWriMo goal and write 100,000 words in the month of November, which I did successfully complete. I have a vlog about this process on this channel that I posted last fall. I can link that below. But for that challenge, I wrote 50,000 words for the draft of a new queer YA novel that I'm hoping to release next year. Plus, I wrote 3 short novellas for my romance pen name. And then in 2019, I failed NaNoWriMo. And this story's gonna be so funny when you hear what's coming next, okay? Listen up. Originally, I was using NaNoWriMo 2019 as a challenge to write a sequel to the book Sculpt Yourself that I had published the year before. And this sequel book was going to be called Indecent Exposure. And I never finished this book. In 2019, originally the reason that I didn't finish it was that halfway through the month, I got distracted and switched projects and started working on my book Savvy Business Owner instead. And that's now one of my most successful books. So I guess it wasn't really a failure in the long run. But the reason that after that I never returned to writing Indecent Exposure is, drumroll please, are you ready for this? It was a speculative sci-fi adjacent novel where part of the plot was that in the future there might be a strange new made-up AI style technology that could grab things from the internet to take all the human bias out of the creation of online content, only for the story to very quickly turn dystopian when one of the main characters has her photography stolen by an AI bot. 5 years later, that's not science fiction. That's literally exactly what's happening. And NaNoWriMo, the organization, is enabling it? We'll get to that. See, and all of the times I took part in the NaNoWriMo challenge, I never used their website. I never got involved in the organization, save for once back in 2019 where I made a video for the official NaNoWriMo YouTube channel with tips on how to stay motivated with your writing. In exchange for making the video, the organization sent me this mug, which I still use. I think it's a cute mug. But I guess I never really realized how big of a deal NaNoWriMo, the organization itself, was. I always thought of NaNoWriMo as one of those things like No Shave November. I thought it was like a challenge that people just did. Every time I did the challenge, I'd track my own words in my own document. I'd attend people's writing live streams on YouTube to keep me going. I'd use the NaNoWriMo name in my vlogs about my writing challenge that month for SEO purposes. I tried using the website maybe once or twice. I have an account there, although I guess the account I have there now was made solely to read the forums to make this video. But I did have an account there at one point, but I don't think I ever actually posted my writing there. The features on the website were pretty overwhelming, so in the end, I just kind of gave up. Maybe that was for the best when we see what's happening next. I don't know. But my point is, I didn't realize how much so many people were relying on the NaNoWriMo website and the resources provided by the organization itself. And once I learned how important the organization was, along with that, I learned about how over the past few years, this organization has been grossly failing the writers who rely on it. Recently, NaNoWriMo was the subject of a controversy for releasing a weirdly vague statement on the use of AI technology in writing a novel. We'll get to that later in the video, but it brought up this question of, was NaNoWriMo simply trying to say that some technology which can be classified under the umbrella term of artificial intelligence can be helpful for writers with accessibility needs, like a blind writer using a screen reader that's technically considered AI, for example. I interviewed such a writer for this video, so get excited. What more people were worried about was that that wasn't what NaNoWriMo meant by it, and that what they were actually saying was that it's totally cool if people want to use ChatGPT, or more likely their sponsor company Pro Writing Aid, to just generate the text of the entire novel itself, without writing any of it yourself as a human, and therefore condoning actual plagiarism. But as I looked deeper into this situation, it quickly became clear that this AI controversy was like barely the tip of the iceberg. This wasn't wasn't even NaNoWriMo's first time taking shady sponsorships that compromised the integrity of their mission. And beyond that, it led me down a rabbit hole that uncovered nearly 5 years of employee and volunteer abuse, child endangerment and exploitation, ableism, racism, and so much more. Has NaNoWriMo lost control of everything that once made their organization so great? Was it ever great to begin with? Is there going to be any coming back from this? For this video, I interviewed a variety of people who were involved in these situations, including former NaNoWriMo employees and volunteers. I am so grateful to everyone who chose to share their story with me.
So I participated in every, November Nano from 2008 on. In 2016, I became an intern. It was before they were paying interns, so it was like a glorified volunteership. My official title was the operations intern. I worked under Shelby. May 2021, I officially came on as the development manager, and then I was laid off in December 2022.
My name is Hale Lightcap. I ran under the pen name of HM Lightcap, and I was very briefly involved with Nano for literally a year, and then it was immediately on fire.
So I joined in 2002. In 2014, I started helping with the local organizing. Each region is run a little differently because we develop our own traditions and ways of coping. In our region, it's really long in a valley. I'm in the Rogue Valley of Oregon. The main person stepped down in 17 or 18, and that's when I took over for the whole region.
My name is Jana. In 2005, I became an ML, a municipal liaison. And then in 2008, I moved from Calgary to Saskatoon and began MLing in Saskatoon. Also in 2006, I started moderating some forums, and I moderated until 2016.
My name is Kat. I think on Nano I was Kit Kat Pattywork. Yeah, that sounds about right. I was a Nano participant from at least 2007. It might have been 2005 or 2006. Mm-hmm. I know that I was doing Nano before I found out that there was an actual forum where you could register. Yeah. So that's where the waters get a little muddy. Yeah. And I participated every year until I became an ML in, I want to say 2018. And then we quit in protest for 2021 off of the way that I had been treated.
Hi, I'm Dalcy Silverno. I am a blind sci-fi author, and I have one published book. And I've done NaNoWriMo before, but yes, this latest statement, I don't want to get associated with them anymore. I don't want to do with them anymore. It's like, I'm done with them. It's over because the hypocrisy was too much for me.
I've been participating for the past few years. I was involved in person in the central New Jersey region. I moved there about a decade ago. That's really when I started getting involved because it was just an easy way to find and meet new people. And ever since then, I just got steadily more involved, a lot to just myself and my local community. Probably not until really right before the pandemic, right around then, was I super involved in the online space, which it always weirded me out a little bit, and now I kind of see why.
I'm Izzy. I first got involved with NaNoWriMo when I was 14. I saw it on Tumblr, and from then on my life just sort of became writing. I was quite lost in life at the time, and NaNoWriMo just gave me that structure to my life that I really needed, being at an online school. I'm just about to enter my third year of a creative writing degree. I was the municipal liaison for Derbyshire, which is my home region, for 3 years. I went to my first writing when I was 15. I've written nearly 5 million words doing NaNoWriMo. I did 40 hours of events during my first year, on top of full-time studying. And I look at this organization, as heartbreaking as it is to say, I think it does just need to go.
In addition, I also did one email interview with the writer who's going by the name of Thorn and does not want their full name or their pen name associated with NaNoWriMo and those controversies, and did not appear on camera. Thorn is the youngest writer that I interviewed. They are currently 18 years old, and they were actually a member of NaNoWriMo's Young Writers program back in 2022 when they were 16 years old. So I will be reading pieces of their testimony along with the interviews in this video. To say that there is a lot to unpack would be an understatement, so let's start unpacking. everybody! Welcome back to my channel. I'm Savvy, and this is Savvy Writes Books, a channel where we do book reviews, video essays, business commentary, a variety of things. So if you are interested in the kinds of topics that I cover on this channel, please consider subscribing. My goal, which I don't know if I'm going to hit or not, I would love to make it to 100,000 subscribers before the end of 2024, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I do want to also give a thank you to my Patreon supporters whose names are up on the screen. Patreon supporters have made it possible for me to keep making videos at the quality that I've been able to as often as I want to. So thank you guys so much for supporting my Patreon. If you look in the description below, Patreon supporters who contribute $5 a month and up have the option to link their own stuff that they want to promote in my description below, so check that out as well. And if you're interested in blog posts and bonus videos and just behind the scenes content and extra stuff, you can check out my Patreon page as well and consider supporting this channel. Since today's video is all about those of us who love creative writing, I am excited that a creative writing platform has chosen to sponsor me today. Today's video is sponsored by StoryForge, an online writing platform that allows users to share their own writing and give one another feedback. I recently created my own writer's circle on StoryForge, which is a place where writers can post discussion topics, share manuscripts with one another, that kind of thing. So if you're interested in joining my writer's circle, which I've called Doll Fanfiction with Savvy, go ahead and click on the link in my description below. I've been using that space to post ideas on American Girl Doll in-universe fanfiction that I've been trying to write, including coming up with some of my own versions of like progressive themed dolls that the company is too scared to release on their own. And it's been collaborative, and I've been wanting to take suggestions from you guys on what I should put into their stories. Recently, I actually added a brand new manuscript to my writer's circle, which includes a rough outline for the big project that I'm planning to work on throughout this fall and probably into next year, which is creating a doll-themed role-playing game. This is a project that I really want feedback from you guys on as I enter writing the first draft, especially because RPG rulebooks and that kind of thing, that's not a genre that I've ever written in before, and I'm really excited about the fact that I'm trying something totally new. If you want to join StoryForge and check out my writer's circle, head to storyforge.com to make your own account, which you can make for free. When you sign up, you will receive 50 free quill coins, which is StoryForge's version of in-game currency. This fall, StoryForge is also planning to roll out some new features like word count tracking, which is a feature I would love. They're also about to add these small 10-person writing groups called a Writer's Nook, and I'm hoping that I can create a special Writer's Nook community to focus on feedback for this doll RPG, because I think that could be a really fun community for us. So basically, that's the site where I'm planning to post some of my, I guess, more alternative type of writing projects that are outside the norm of what I would normally publish, because I want to get so much feedback from you guys and make this a community-focused effort, and I'd love it if you guys would join me over there as well. So thank you so much to StoryForge for sponsoring me today. Don't forget to check out those links in my description. Now let's head back into our topic. So let's start with some background information. How did NaNoWriMo start? What was the original goal of the challenge? And how did the organization get so far away from that original goal? Background. What is NaNoWriMo? NaNoWriMo was the creation of a writer named Chris Beatty, and it first began in 1999. That year, it wasn't meant to be this huge international nonprofit. Back in 1999, NaNoWriMo was simply a writing challenge for a small group of writers to complete, I guess, before the end of that year, and since it was 1999, that would also mean that they finished their novel drafts before the end of a millennium, so that's kind of cool. As Chris Beatty's website explains, Chris Beatty accidentally founded National Novel Writing Month in 1999 and oversaw its growth from 21 friends to more than 300,000 writers in 90 countries. The official NaNoWriMo website explains their origins like this. National Novel Writing Month began in 1999 as a daunting but straightforward challenge to write 50,000 words of a novel in 30 days. Now, each year on November 1st, hundreds of thousands of people around the world begin to write, determined to end the month with a first draft. They enter the month as elementary school teachers, mechanics, or stay-at-home parents. They leave novelists. NaNoWriMo officially became a nonprofit organization in 2006, and our programs now include community writing challenges like National Novel Writing Month in November and Camp NaNoWriMo in April and July, resource-driven initiatives like Nano Prep in September and October, and the Now What months in January and February, the Young Writers Program for kids, teens, teachers, and families, plus local initiatives like the Come Write In program for libraries, bookstores, and community spaces, and the Municipal Liaison program for local volunteers. The NaNoWriMo community uses a lot of its own terms, which we'll break down here before continuing. Many writers have taken to calling participants in this challenge Rhymos, so if you hear someone talk about being a Rhymo or managing a group of Rhymos, they're referring to writers who are participating participating in the challenge. If you hear someone mention MLs, that is short for municipal liaisons. Municipal liaisons, or MLs, are volunteers who run local chapters of NaNoWriMo within their own towns, cities, their own local communities. The ML position is unpaid, and it comes with a lot of responsibility for keeping the writing group community alive, functioning, thriving, motivated. MLs answer to NaNoWriMo's official leadership. They're not employees, but they are tasked with representing the organization as a whole. Multiple people I interviewed for this video are former MLs, and not just in the US. I also interviewed MLs from Canada, from England, from Ireland, so you'll hear a lot of people's perspectives on that in just a bit. YWP stands for Young Writers Program, and that's a group of writers under the age of 18 who want to participate in NaNoWriMo. YWP wasn't the only special community for young writers. We also had CTT, which stands for Christian Teens Together, and was also a forum for writers under 18, and that will later become relevant. A far cry from the 21 writer local community that Chris Beatty started in 1999, by 2022, NaNoWriMo had over 400,000 participants, which included about 85,000 writers under the age of 18. NaNoWriMo's website boasted its international status with local chapters on 6 different continents. But as with the rapid growth of any organization, if you don't scale properly, you're gonna have growing pains. And it's normal to struggle with a transition from being a small writing group to this massive organization. But you'd think that maybe over the period of 25 years, maybe they'd get it together? Instead, as many of the people I interviewed told me, NaNoWriMo took pride in having this startup vibe and feeling like a haphazard cluster of writers just trying their best.
It just seems like they went out of their way to make things needlessly difficult. But I mostly hear about the lack of support for MLs. But then I've also heard accounts from interns. They had a very similar story of the atmosphere was like dysfunctional but working, and they didn't try to do anything to fix it. So it was just, oh, look at how janky we are. It's quirky. It's like, well, no, you're kind of an international organization.
Instead of trying to become this organized, well-oiled machine, NaNoWriMo leaned into its disorganized reputation, playing it off like this fun quirk to make it relatable to creatives who are just getting started. We're just like you. And I guess that's cute when you're a rapidly growing organization like 2 to 3 years in, but once it's been a quarter century and you have nearly 500,000 participants, it stops being cute and it starts being frustrating and also dangerous. In fact, NaNoWriMo's changes in leadership have been a pretty big cause for concern for participants over the years. Changes in leadership. Chris Beatty, the original founder of NaNoWriMo, retired from the organization in 2013, now more than a decade ago. And it seems like Chris leaving the organization is where the problems first started to break through the cracks. Chris may have never initially intended for NaNoWriMo to get as big as it did, but from everything I heard, he was pretty good at rolling with it. In the end, NaNoWriMo was his baby, his brainchild, his passion project. So he was all in on making it as good as it could possibly be. At the very least, his intentions were always honest.
With him, it was very much more grassroots, very community oriented, and the community built the traditions. So all of this was in place. We felt very emotionally invested. It just felt like our place.
When Chris was in charge, it was very fun, and like whimsy was like the word. We knew staff were writing too. We'd get chatty emails from them saying, this is how my writing's going. How about you?
Mm-hmm.
The community was just all very much, it was like a group of friends who all decided to do this crazy thing together at the same time. And so then we could make new friends from all over.
It's kind of really a typical case of founder syndrome that no one ever did anything about,
Mm-hmm.
where you have the visionary founder that can easily just take their thought and apply it to the thing that they created.
Yeah.
And the more you move away from that, if you don't have like some sort of institutional memory that can really hold the organization together, you're going to run into problems.
After his organization had been running successfully for about 13 years, Chris decided to step down from his role as NaNoWriMo's executive director, instead choosing to focus on his true passion, being a full-time writer. He'd started this challenge in the first place as a way to motivate himself and his colleagues to write more, which was to be a full-time author. That was the goal. And honestly, I don't blame him for stepping down for that reason. Sometimes your career's focus just ends up so far away from your original intention, and that's when it can be time to make some tough decisions. I'd probably have done the exact same thing in his position. Just let the man write. Being an author is a completely different skill from managing a nonprofit with hundreds of thousands of users. It was after Chris stepped down in 2013 that the organization's downfall really started to happen. And that was with the transfer of leadership to a man named Grant Faulkner. Grant Faulkner is a boss bro. He's a male boss babe, there's no way around it. For example, a quick scroll through the coaching and editing page of his website takes you through a bunch of sales pitches about how he can help you develop a creative mindset and connect more deeply with your work and embrace the power of being vulnerable. Throughout this page, after every paragraph, he includes a link that says, "Work with me," and he has this link 6 times. 6 times on the same page. This is giving me flashbacks to when I used to cover those shady motivational speaker, multi-level marketing boss bro guru types all the time. If you click on the work with me link, it just takes you to his contact page, so I have no idea how much these services even cost. Grant brought a very business-minded approach to NaNoWriMo, and that's not inherently bad. The organization needed someone who could approach things with a very logistical mindset, and Grant seemed like the kind of guy who could handle a rapidly growing nonprofit. But sometimes the boss bro impulses were just a little too strong. In my interview with Thorn, the former member of NaNoWriMo's Young Writers program, here is what they had to say about Grant. Essentially the head that let the rot develop. Notable actions, a donation slide which suggests that someone making $1,000 a month should give $300 per year to Nano. Left late 2023. Actually, a lot of the people I interviewed had a similar opinion of Grant, that by being too financially focused, he spearheaded Nano's downfall as a creative organization.
Grant came on directly into the org as executive director when Chris Beatty, the creator and founder of Nano, left. So he came in really without a lot of the like hands-on work that other people like Shelby and Tim, who came on as interns and worked their way up the company, Grant didn't have that perspective. I think that's a really big part of it. The other really big part of it is Grant was kind of always doing his own thing. Like, I never really understood what Grant was doing. I understood that he got money for the organization, but he was just kind of like off in his own little world. And this was like very clearly reflected in how people reacted to his leadership within the org.
It became more, I mean, understandably on one hand, it became a little more business oriented at that point because the nonprofit part, they grew. They built more to do with their child, like the school programs called the Young Writers program, stuff like that. The more they grew, the more money they needed. So then we started getting a lot more push for donations, and it started feeling a little less cozy.
There was a summer where I was gathering donation items. I was on Etsy looking for donation items. I loved collecting donation items that like were inspired by Nano or like had NaNoWriMo on them. Because it was exciting to see people, you know, make art that was inspired by Nano. And it was like a kind of a win-win situation. We got to promote them. They got to donate stuff to us. But Grant walked by while I was looking at these things and he was just like, "Oh yeah, like I always mean to send a cease and desist to these people because they're violating our copyright." And I was just like, these people are giving us free stuff. I didn't say anything because I was like kind of shocked. But that was just kind of like his perspective on like what NaNoWriMo was to other people was very it was very odd.
Around 2019, they did a website redesign, a rebuild that went very poorly. They were supposed to beta test it with us, the municipal liaisons, but everything did not work out in time. And then along came NaNoWriMo in November, and things weren't working. And we spent our whole month having to help our participants figure it all out. They ruined the forums at that point. They changed everything about how they were set up. People had much more difficult time finding their way around. That was really bad, but it was also really expensive. So once again, the plea for donations kept, just going up. And then we were just starting to get way too many emails during this special weekend in November where they really push for donations. We have had 12 donation emails land in our inboxes in 24 hours. So, I mean, it was just way too much. They were full on spamming us.
It's kind of really a typical case of founder syndrome that no one ever did anything about, where you have the visionary founder that can easily just take their thought and apply it to the thing that they created.
Yeah.
And the more you move away from that, if you don't have like some sort of institutional memory that can really hold the organization together, you're going to run into problems. The problems are, usually perfectly manageable if you don't do what they've been doing, but that is something that happens. I did have a meeting with Grant Faulkner at one point just to volunteer my help for free. I'm like, look, I have an MBA. I work in the business world. I do sell a lot of products and some of the jobs that I've had years behind a desk running like administrative teams of people. Like, it would probably not be hard for me to just come up with some back office systems to make your life easier, or get you a serious discount on like a CRM program so you could send out emails without having to think about it too much. And he was just like, his response was, name another organization that does what we do, that has this many members. Like, it was a promo. It was an infomercial in a way. And so I never got the sense that the people running the organization really had a good grasp of both the positives and negatives and sort of the direction in which it was heading.
I remember during my internship, Shelby mentioned to me that, oh yeah, Tim only does things for Grant after Grant asks 3 times, because he's learned that Grant will like forget or will change his mind so quickly that he only knows that he's like for sure serious if he says, like, if he asks, hey, do this 3 times. So he's just like, he was like a very airy leader. Like, he never really seemed to quite get it. I definitely don't think Grant was the best person at all to be in charge of Nano.
Then along comes 2020, right? COVID. They were good about shutting down the way they needed to and telling us, we are not backing any in-person events. They did still need to offer something. So they wanted us, the local organizers, to use Discord. They really pushed it. They personally did not have their own official Discord. So there was another volunteer who was pretty familiar with it and offered everyone this big walkthrough about how to set up a server that would function pretty well for local writing events. Historically, they wanted events to be more public facing, anything online to happen through the website. Now things were happening out of sight on Discord servers. So the groups were getting more and more independent, but also our workloads went way, way up because they still wanted us to run in-person events when that opened up again, and they still wanted us to maintain everything else. So we kept getting a lot of demands that we also beg our participants for donations. So NaNoWriMo would be sending emails, and we were supposed to be sending emails too. So there was a lot of conflict there. Honestly, I never did send those emails.
I mean, for a position I'm not being paid for, I wouldn't either. Yeah.
I couldn't stomach it. At that time, Grant Faulkner was still executive director. In fact, he was until, I believe, through 2023. Kilby Blades, the board president. She started answering questions and trying to explain things to us about how they plan to do things. A lot of these writers really depended on online forums for whatever reasons, financial, disability. Well, at one point she said that she didn't really care for forums and that, really for her, just retreats are fine. And for us, it felt a little bit like a let them eat cake statement.
Right.
It's like, oh, you might not save the forums because you don't like them and you prefer retreats. I don't know how to wrap my head around this.
And I think that point there is a great transition into our next leader who took over as executive director after Grant left, a woman named Kilby Blades. All in all, Grant was an okay-ish leader. He seemed like a dude who's pretty passionate about writing, but there were times that he just couldn't turn off that sales pitchy part of himself, and that's going to become more relevant in the next part of our video when we talk about some of the publishing scams and shady sponsorships affiliated with NaNoWriMo under Grant's leadership. But for now, let's give an introduction to Kilby Blades, NaNoWriMo's current leader, who, according to basically everyone I interviewed, has made NaNoWriMo worse than ever. Kilby Blades is a romance author, the former president of NaNoWriMo's board, and the current executive director for NaNoWriMo. In her work as executive director, Kilby Blades has chosen to present herself as her romance pen name, Kilby Blades. Here's what her website says about that. A personal note, my name is not Kilby. It seems fitting to tell you that my real name isn't Kilby Blades. Given the, racy nature of the earlier novels I wrote as Kilby Blades, I prefer to stay in the closet. The name Kilby Blades was inspired by my late fictionista friend of the same name. She passed away in 2003 at the end of a long autoimmune illness that we didn't know nearly enough about at the time. We were both in our early 20s when she died. It's hard to explain how somebody who is gone can still hold such an important place in my life. But Kilby does. In addition to being an amazing person with intelligence, wisdom, and heart around all manner of things, she was, for years, the most important person in my writing life. She told me when my writing sucked, did so with the right balance of compassion and truth, and stepped up my game around big concepts of craft. I dedicated my first original novel, Snapdragon, to her, and have chosen to write under her name as an homage. So first things first, it's really tragic that her friend died so young, and I am incredibly sad that this person's family had to lose someone so early. It's honestly a tragedy that the world never got to read this person's writing. But this is where I'm confused, okay? Is this person's name also Kilby Blades? Is Kilby Blades the name of the friend who passed away? Was that her pen name? Was that her legal name? Did the woman, the currently living Kilby Blades of the NaNoWriMo organization, did that woman take another author's name? Did the author die before she got to publish? It probably doesn't matter, right? Like, in the end, it's up to every individual how they want to honor and remember the people that they've lost in their own lives. I'm not here to police anyone's grief. What I am here to do is say that there's a strange bit of foreshadowing with this, considering how later in the video there will be a significant controversy around a different person, a certain Mod X that we're going to get to, and so confusion regarding whether that person's alive or dead, situations with them faking their own death, using their account and alt accounts to fake additional deaths, and people naming themselves after people close to them who have died and then intentionally obscuring which person is actually alive and which person is talking to us right now. I'm not saying that Kilby herself is also doing that. I'm just saying, who is the real Kilby Blades? And also, if you're going by your pen name because you're trying to protect your identity, why are you using the name you write the spicy, sexy novels under as the identity when you're serving as executive director of a nonprofit with over 400,000 users? Like, why wouldn't you just keep Kilby Blades as the romance pen name and then use your real name for running NaNoWriMo and never have those two parts of your life together, like keep those two parts separate? The fact that she's using her romance pen name for her work as executive director, that means she is putting those pieces of her life together rather than remaining in the closet. So I'm just so confused on what's going on here. I will say, though, Kilby Blades is an awesome as hell name. That is like a full-on supervillain name, and it's kind of fitting when we break down the situation.
We go from December, where she's president of the board, and then eventually Grant steps down. Actually, he became like some budget overseer. I don't remember his exact title, and I think it lasted for 2 weeks. But she took over as the interim executive director at the beginning of this year, and it became awful. Working with her as a municipal liaison was a nightmare. You couldn't complain about anything without being lectured and treated like a child who knew nothing.
She tends to come off like a human version of the British Empire, like everything is just so imperious. She just has this sort of encased in like lacquer of privilege kind of attitude with everything that she declares.
There's a lot of concern that she's kind of trying to gut the community because she made a post specifically stating she doesn't see the point in internet forums, and she believes that people should prioritize writers' retreats. It's hard to escape the classism and just like her crass way of pushing her agenda.
Kilby was board president at this time, and
Okay.
everyone was still on staff.
Mm-hmm.
And people were calling for specific members of staff to be fired because of the way that they had been handling stuff. When the board came in, they started a thread for board Q&A for us to ask them questions, 1 question per post, please. And then Kilby came in to answer questions and just did a pick and choose. Like, I asked what their policies and procedures were, and I still don't know what their policies and procedures are, or if they even have any. Did not get an answer to that at all. And some of us, we'd ask things and then offer assistance with stuff. So like when I asked about policies and procedures, I said that I would be willing to look at them and see where maybe they needed to add some stuff or change some stuff. Nothing. No acceptance of assistance, which was an ongoing thing. You'd say, hey, I can do this thing, and no response. Somebody asked about the forums because they had been frozen. Kilby said that the forums weren't important and that she went on a weekend writing retreat every year. She got a response of, not everybody can go to in-person events. After that, Kilby's whole everything was, her back was up. We still were hoping, but then they closed the questions. Every time you think they can't do anything more wrong, they do.
If you're going to lead something, you should be proud of that. You should be like, this is my organization. I am so happy to be a part of this community. Not, here's my AI headshot, don't talk to me. But that's her attitude. Like, she wants to George.
Yeah, is her picture just an AI image? Because when I was on her Instagram, I'm like, this picture of her looks AI generated. This doesn't look real.
It completely is. It's like her own version of like relationship George and independent George, and she like does not want them coming together for whatever reason. And I really think she doesn't have a very high opinion of NaNoWriMo to begin with. Otherwise, she wouldn't care if it was part of a regular life, which begs the question, why are you leading this thing? Just to try to tank it or something? Like, why, if you're not in it, get out of it. At this point, it's unsavable anyhow, but it's a lesson in, if you're gonna play a leadership role in something, you should be passionate about it, which I think would be a 101 no duh kind of thing. But in today's world, where tech bros that don't understand their products are a dime a dozen, and that's just the way we live, I guess it needs to be like underlined several times. You need to be passionate before you do the thing.
In my email interview with Thorne, here's what they had to say about Kilby. Executive Director, formerly a member of NaNoWriMo's Board of Directors, works under her romance pen name, Kilby Blades, despite being a nonfiction author and columnist under her real name. Notable actions: trying to hire a background check company investigated by the IRS, firing MLs en masse with zero warning, not communicating with MLs about when they'll return, and seemingly publicly not caring about having them return to run their region's camps in April and July as normal, the ban on minors at regional events or in regions and the forums, and a general inability to make good decisions. She most likely wrote the AI post too. Fuck Kilby Blades is practically my motto at this point, if that explains anything. And don't worry, in the next few sections we will break down some of those individual controversies that involve Kilby as well. But this section is all just to say, as NaNoWriMo continued to change leadership, the organization seemed to stray further and further from its original goals, instead involving itself in controversy and chasing strategic brand partnerships above all else. And this first became clear a few years ago when NaNoWriMo got into a big controversy for promoting a scam to its hundreds of thousands of writers. Scam sponsorships. In 2022, NaNoWriMo took a sponsorship from a company called Inkit. Inkit promotes itself as a reader-powered publisher. At first glance, Inkit looks like a fairly benign company. As a reader-powered publisher, it seems to be a site where authors can upload their stories, and then readers can subscribe for a monthly fee, read whatever stories they want, and then the authors can keep a fraction of the earnings from the monthly pool, depending on how many of the pages read were theirs. Basically, it's like the same model as what we see on Amazon with the Kindle Unlimited program, but despite its initial appearance, appearance, after a deeper look, it becomes clear that Inkit is, unfortunately, another vanity press scam. Victoria Strauss, who runs the famous blog Writer Beware, or at least it's pretty famous in online writing communities, she covered Inkit all the way back in 2016 with her post titled "Spam, Spam, 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 Inkit and the Grand Novel Contest." Victoria writes, "If you're a writer and have even a smidgen of online presence, you've probably been emailed or messaged or tweeted by Inkit, a Berlin-based company that allows writers to post stories and get reader reviews and votes. A prolific spammer, Inkit also conducts a lot of contests with titles like Vendetta Thriller Action Adventure Contest, along with fanfic contests like Star Wars Sci-Fi Writing Contest. Does George Lucas know? Winning gets you badges on your profile page and occasionally publication. Most recently, Inkit launched its Grand Novel Contest, for which, no surprise, it is energetically spamming on Twitter. Win a publishing offer from Inkit, no submission fees. Submit your finished novel, 40,000 words or more, no fanfiction, no other limitations on genre. It's time for you to bring your manuscript into the light and show it off to the world. We are looking for tomorrow's bestsellers." So why would you want to win a book publishing offer from Inkit? Well, you kind of wouldn't. Inkit was co-founded by programmer Ali Albazaz, who was inspired by the success of E.L. James's 50 Shades of Grey, in particular the idea of crowdsourced editing. "Don't publish in 2 years when you're finished, publish as you go, get feedback from other writers, and improve." Albazaz claims he has developed an intelligent algorithm that uniquely distinguishes Inkit from other similar sites like Wattpad. "We've developed an artificially intelligent algorithm that analyzes the behavior of readers on our website. We measure their engagement and build statistical models to forecast the positioning of a book in the real-world market even before it is published. Once we have found a potential blockbuster book, the next step is working with publishers to get these stories to print. You may also be impressed by Inkit's 4-stage publishing process. Step 1, we design your cover and edit your manuscript. Step 2, we pitch your book to A-list publishers. Step 3, if the publishers don't pick your book, we publish you and run a marketing campaign to sell as many books as possible. If we can't sell them more than 1,000 books within 12 months, then you get all your rights back. Step 4, but if your book sells well, we go back to the A-list publishers, exhibit your success, and ask if they want to print your book." If you know anything about publishing, you know how well this is likely to work. Yeah, so most A-list publishers are looking for debuts. They're looking for new books that haven't been previously published. Sure, you get a few runaway success stories like 50 Shades of Grey, for example, where writers will put out a story of their own online and then later a publisher will pick it up, but that is only when a book has massive success, like unprecedented success, like when it becomes a phenomenon. Usually it goes viral on Instagram or TikTok or something like that. But let's say you write a book that sells pretty well. Like it sells more than 1,000 copies within the first year, so Inkit doesn't revert your rights back to you. They keep the rights and continue pitching it to other publishers. No publisher is going to pick up a book that sells pretty well. They're going to ignore it because it's already been published and they don't get the rights to release it first. That's not a gamble most companies are going to be willing to take because a lot of people already bought that book and another publisher already profited from it. Inkit was looking at a few runaway success stories that are absolutely more the exception than the rule and are extremely rare, and they were using that as a default for a business model. That is not sustainable. So I'm going to link this whole post in the description below. I highly recommend everyone read through it since Victoria Strauss has so many updates throughout the process and she's covered this very thoroughly. In 2016, independent author David Gowie also wrote a blog post about his experiences working with Inkit, in which he basically concludes that Inkit functions like your typical vanity press scam. David writes, "Inkit, as some of you may know, is a story publishing site similar to Wattpad or fanfiction, if not in how the site operates, but in that it's ostensibly a community of writers and readers. I say ostensibly because, as some of you may also know, a lot of Inkit's fame in the e-publishing world has come from both its spamming and being labeled as a spammer. In the new contest for novel-length manuscripts, the way to win was to reach 100 reserved copies, each representing a user who actively read your book. Once your book reaches this cutoff, something Inkit always refers to as the algorithm takes over. While it's apparently a trade secret, I suspect it's just a hype-up page view counter. Because the system is operating on pure numbers instead of being read by judges, you can imagine that it'd be pretty easy to game it, especially if you already have a significant fan base from another website. Keep in mind that this was the goal of the spam emails and tweets mentioned in the articles above, to poach writers who were already popular on other platforms with the promise of publication through Inkit. This is where things take a turn from their optimistic pitch. Of all the winners Inkit's had so far, None have been published traditionally. Yeah, this is a confusing mess. I would stay far away from Inkit. Oh my god, this is why I self-publish, okay? In 2022, during Grant Faulkner's leadership, NaNoWriMo took a sponsorship from this company, Inkit. The sponsorship involved their website recommending Inkit to writers as a legitimate path to pursue publication after their novel drafts were finished. Keep in mind that many participants in NaNoWriMo, in fact maybe even the majority, are not professional writers. Sure, many professional writers do use November as a writing challenge, as a way to progress on current manuscripts. That's what I do. But the whole point of the challenge was to welcome new writers and encourage people to write their first novels. It was considered a way to get started as a writer. Remember, there's the Young Writers Program, there are the teen writing forums, things like that. So it seems kind of sus that they were advertising this type of company to writers who likely don't have much experience making money off of their books, who might not know the different paths to publication and their various pros and cons, who trust NaNoWriMo's recommendations and that they're going to be legitimate. On the last day of the 2022 NaNoWriMo Challenge, that's November 30th, 2022, writer Rachel Sharp wrote a blog post on her blog Word Nerd Girl about this experience. She says, "This year, when I punched in my final word count, I got the usual lovely confetti and charming winner video and little heart reacts from the wonderful people in my local Nano Discord. I felt good, until I clicked on the winner goodies section, which is a set of discounts available to winners for things like writing software, plotting software, and typing devices. Those are all great, even if they are a bit of free advertising for the companies offering the discounts. But this year, I noticed that my winner goodies included a chance to win publishing contracts, social media spotlights, and more from a company called Inkit, and that is not okay." So here, Rachel is basically confirming that if you use the NaNoWriMo website to input your words, if you hit the 50,000 word goal by the end of the month, they would then direct you to Inkit with a promotion for a chance to win this contest, to win this shady publishing contract from them. It was directly funneling people to submit their new manuscripts to Inkit. Rachel continues, "I learned about Inkit because they replied to one of my tweets with an offer to publish my book, which by the way was already published, but the bots didn't know that. I looked into them and found dozens of fake accounts spamming people with their single link. A little further, and I found that if you give them an email address, they will hound you until you die. When I wrote my initial blog post about them, the co-founder contacted me to talk about it, but refused to discuss any of the actual issues until I gave him my phone number, which, yeah, like hell, buddy. He then stalked me across multiple platforms to say that Inkit was innocent. Inkit is not innocent. Inkit is a scam. Inkit lures people into giving away their first publishing rights so they can't sell the book to anyone else, and gives them a chance to win a contract or possibly to be shopped around to real publishers, which is the job of an agent. When I found Inkit on my winner goodies page, I went to the forums to ask why this extremely disreputable company had been included and suggest that people Google them before signing up. The highlights of the following day on the forums are as follows. The mods panicked. I was banned for disparaging a sponsor. I wrote this post. Other authors joined me in saying that Inkit was not okay. The mods presumably had a long and stressful meeting. The mods unbanned me and others and sent both public and personal apologies. I, for one, absolutely forgave them because the core issue here is not their fault. We all settled down for a long talk in the forums about sponsors, forum moderation policies, and how to make sure all of this never happens again, which is ongoing at the time of writing. But Inkit remained on the winner goodies page." Some people involved have pointed to the Inkit controversy as being part of Grant Faulkner's leadership. Remember, the dude's a boss bro, so it kind of makes sense that he'd see a sponsor's dollar signs lighting up as a path to pursue without much hesitation. At least that's in my opinion and in other people's opinions too.
For Inkit, I was technically an employee during that time. I, weirdly enough though, didn't hear about Inkit's issues until like a year later when they came out on the mega thread. My role didn't have a lot to do with the forums. I think if it had, I would have seen it a lot faster. And I always thought when I learned about it, I thought it was really weird that like a email like didn't go out to all of the staff on like, hey, this is what happened. This is what we're doing to fix it. If anyone has any questions, like this is what you say. You can direct them to this place. Like I would think even though Nano was a really small org, you would at least want to make sure everyone was like on the same page with public facing issues, you know? So I did find it really odd that I had to find out about it in the forums a year later, which is doubly bad. If Grant should have done his due diligence, I think like if you're gonna build relationships with people, you should understand like the very basic how they make their money and if it's ethical. And I think it also goes to a little bit back to showing just like he was just kind of checked out. He wasn't really doing the proper work that he needed to do to help Nano grow and be successful and make appropriate relationships. So that was just really disappointing to me, because it wasn't like Grant like didn't know that vanity presses were bad.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the first things you learn when you really start to do research on like serious publishing is, hey, these are scam websites. Like Victoria Strauss is probably one of the first people who probably come up when people start warning others about scams. And she'd had, you know, like I feel like she had like decades of research on this stuff. And it was just disappointing that Nano, because of Grant's lack of due diligence, made it seemed like to other people that Nano didn't know what a vanity press was. And that was disappointing.
Oh God, it was really a shame that it was just being used to push like these like predatory vanity presses, because you're not helping people. You're not actually helping these people become better writers. You're just hurting them towards getting like their hearts broken. And I know that it was a thing for publishers where, yeah, November would roll around, and then all that would mean is that you're going to immediately be flooded with these unedited first draft manuscripts that don't even make sense. And then Nano was pushing it even farther by listing predatory presses in their "What do I do next?"
Well, I really started to notice, and I was kind of hoping that people would obviously start to notice that things were really shady around the first time I saw the name Inkit mentioned anywhere. It has a pretty bad reputation. It's had a pretty bad reputation for years, almost ever since it existed. NaNoWriMo is one of those things where you write something to say that you wrote something, and then you have a draft and you work on it. But a lot of people doing it are amateurs. Like I've never had a full published novel. You know, most people doing it are not making a living in the creative space, or at least not in fiction writing. And to partner with a company that's selling people on the idea that yes, you can, don't worry about it, don't look at our statistics, is already off. And I already felt highly not good about that. When people brought that up, including myself, the conversation was immediately locked down as sort of a, how dare you attack this sponsor that we just kind of found and cozied up to out of nowhere. It's kind of like catching your husband or wife in bed with somebody. You don't know who they are, but apparently they've known who the other person is for years now. That pattern kept emerging again and again ever since then. There was even a promotion they ran, I believe, and my 22, I'm not sure if the year's right, but I think it was 22, where they were doing a contest with Nano entries specifically, where people could take their finished drafts and send them to Inkit. So Inkit was getting a target audience out of it. They were getting, I don't know how many people signed up for it, but all of those contest entry folks would be creating new accounts with Inkit in order to take their drafts they worked on throughout November and bring them to the publisher. And there were people that were worried about it, and they were just banned for talking. I come from the generation of the internet where, like, I used to moderate forums like in 06 or whatever, and just ban people. They come back the next day. But nowadays,
Right.
it's actually a bigger deal.
Yeah.
And people were just straight up banned for even saying, this is not a good idea. This is what's bad about Inkit. Like they were policing, and this is something that they continue to do, they were policing their sponsor's reputation. And they were sacrificing their own reputation for some random company.
Working with Inkit was a red flag for sure. It was a clear sign that NaNoWriMo as an organization was straying from its initial mission to motivate people to complete a writing challenge and was instead focusing on the financial aspects of publication, choosing to promote one of the shadiest publishers in the business. It is worth noting that by the end of 2022, NaNoWriMo did recognize the error of their ways. They ended their sponsorship with Inkit, removed Inkit from their website, and apologized to users. If you remember Victoria Strauss, who I mentioned earlier, the writer who runs the Writer Beware blog, it also seems seems that NaNoWriMo leadership ended up reaching out to her directly and then brought her on as a consultant to help vet future sponsors like this. And that was a good move. That was the right move on NaNoWriMo's part. There have been a lot of controversies in this organization, but I do also think it's fair to point out when they learn from their mistakes and make a positive change, which thankfully is what they did here. But unfortunately, as we head into some more darker and more dangerous controversies, we'll see that learning and changing their path is not what they did everywhere. In fact, in some areas, the corruption only got worse. If NaNoWriMo had regrouped and restructured after this controversy, maybe we could have avoided everything that came next. But unfortunately, that is not what happened. Instead, the organization as we knew it continued to unravel. What came next involved the mistreatment of workers, including unpaid volunteers, in situations that involved both racism and ableism, all of which culminated in NaNoWriMo's worst controversy by far, the exploitation of children. Mistreatment of employees and volunteers. During my interviews, the majority of people I spoke to had a lot to say regarding the ways that they, as volunteers and employees within this nonprofit organization, were treated by the people above them. These allegations ranged from things like micromanagement and overworking unpaid volunteers to things like racism and ableism in their interactions. So let's start with the first piece. How did these volunteers, interns, and collaborators feel that leadership took advantage of their hard work?
For my experience, like I had a great experience up until like the last couple of months I was there. Everyone was always really like welcoming and nice. I had good conversations with people, but I can absolutely see how a lack of forethought and due diligence would like make people feel like they were being treated really poorly. I always felt like municipal liaisons, MLs, got a really short end of the stick. They were 800 of them were being managed by one person, Sarah, and that I like at my full-time job, I manage like 10 people max, and I'm overwhelmed. So I can see where like just the way that Nano was always understaffed, emotions can come out, people can say things, and people get hurt because of those things. So although I don't think it was like intentionally like unethical, those things definitely happen.
The communication in NaNoWriMo is very scattered and difficult to put together. So it took a little bit to figure out how to make things work. And I was never able to bring on additional help. So I was alone for the whole valley once I ended up being there, because before it was just two of us, and then when she just got burnt out, so it was just me at that point. They started adding trainings too and various orientations, and they started putting more of a year-round demand on us. And when I first came on, they also wanted us to go around to the schools and really promote the Young Writers program. And I missed the memo where we suddenly didn't have to do that, so I was doing that. Anyway, I didn't go to all the schools, but I would talk to teachers when I had a chance and try to get them to be involved, and some of them were, which weighed on my conscience later on, because when I found out how unsafe it was for kids, I knew I personally directed kids there. One of our biggest difficulties was she presented us with the newest version of the Municipal Liaison Agreement, which is basically our contract. And we got to see a rough draft of that, and it was so overbearing and so creepy and so outright illegal. I mean, there were people, especially around Europe and Canada, showing it to their attorneys. Things like, if you receive an official communication from NaNoWriMo, you don't get to share that with your fellow volunteers. If you have a team of multiple municipal liaisons in one region, you don't get to share this information with each other. One of them that really, like for the Quebec region, was a big problem was we were no longer able to translate the materials into the language of our participants.
What?
She said, yeah, she did.
But it's an international organization, so if people, that doesn't make any sense.
Use, I know, she said, you tell them to use Google Translate. And it's all a trust thing. She's afraid that we're going to interpret it incorrectly, I guess, and pass it on falsely. And we have some documents, some versions of it that were just ripped apart by attorneys with their comments and all the parts that were just not even legal. So it was bad, and she doubled down again.
The new ML agreements were basically, if you signed them, you were basically taking responsibility for anything that went wrong in your region, both on the forum, which we don't have, and in person. So at in-person events, if somebody did something that hurt somebody else, that was your fault. And there was the whole language part too. I just remembered, the MLs weren't supposed to translate any official communications from HQ, which is illegal in Canada. Official communications have to be in English and French in Canada, particularly in Quebec.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I've heard. Yeah.
That's just how that is. So the MLs would be breaking the law.
Keep in mind that all of these people are unpaid volunteers who are just trying to use NaNoWriMo's resources to create local writing groups. They did not sign up to be put in a position like this. And the whole thing about not translating any of the official communications, what is that? Keep in mind, NaNoWriMo is an international organization. Of the 9 people I interviewed for this video, 4 were in the US, 2 were in the UK, 1 was in Canada, 1 was in the Southern Hemisphere but didn't reveal her exact country, and 1 was in Ireland. In Canada, and specifically in Quebec, by law, you have to make everything available in both English and French. Kilby's response of, hey, just use Google Translate. What? A writer of all people should know that languages just do not directly translate to each other like that. Google Translate is a tool you can use if you're trying to understand the rough idea of something someone's trying to say, or like if you're learning another language and want to check that your own translations are sort of in the right direction, but it is not the be-all end-all, especially for official communications with larger organizations that are giving instructions to their volunteers. If Kilby and NaNoWriMo executives in general were so worried about things being mistranslated or translated with bias, then Google Translate is the wrong direction, since it's going to completely obscure the tone of whatever the original thing first said. So to me, this seemed like just another control tactic. There was nothing actually beneficial about it. In some cases, NaNoWriMo HQ's need for control over unpaid volunteer workers even led them into extremely ableist situations.
So in 2019, the site did a complete redesign, and the site redesign was handled so badly. And when we actually finally got the site, it was like 2 weeks maybe before Nano kicked off. And it's, at the time at least, it was very, very not intuitive. Like, you didn't know where anything was, and things weren't where you would expect them to be. And I am autistic, and I'm actually legally blind. At least in this eye, and it's not like this eye is great. So vision problems. And when the font is small and there is no contrast, I can't see crap. And so I just could not get a handle on the new site at all. And so my co-ML, I messaged him and I was like, I don't know what to do about this. And he's like, well, I'll handle the site. You handle all of the off-site stuff. And so, because we had a region Discord, we had a region Facebook, and so I was like, I can totally run those. And I really threw myself into running the region Discord. So we had a lot of virtual write-ins that were happening at the same time as the in-person write-ins that I organized and ran. And we also did like a 2-day write-a-thon where people can just pop into the Discord to write with me. And nobody has to stay for the entire 48 hours with me, but I'm going to be there for 48 hours just to get them over the 15th and 16th middle of the month. And now you're past the worst part. It's all downhill from here, kind of thing. And I just really, really threw myself into the virtual aspect of things because I had also moved outside of Dublin at that point. So I couldn't go to the in-person things. And I am also disabled. And so I was like, this will also help disabled people who can't necessarily have the access to go to the in-person things, whether it's that the places themselves aren't disability friendly, or like it just takes up a lot of energy that you don't have, or like whatever. And we got a lot of people thanking us for that, for those reasons. And in 2020, in the spring, when people are signing up to be returning MLs, I signed up to be a returning ML. It's going to be myself and my best friend again. We're going to co-ML like we've done in the past. We're a really good team. We work well together. And I don't hear anything back. And I'm thinking, oh, that's normal. Sarah's in charge of a bunch of different people. Like, I'm sure some things fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
And Then Sarah posts on the Facebook a couple months later of like, if you are a returning ML and you have reapplied but you haven't heard from us, please email me.
Uh-huh.
And I am in that group, so I email her,
Right.
and she says that she'd been meaning to email me before and forgot, and very sorry about that. But she didn't think that I should be an ML because I hadn't done anything on the site. And I explained the reasons, being that I couldn't
You can't
navigate the
see
site.
the site, yeah.
And so my co-ML and I had decided to divide things up so that he was handling the side of things while I was handling everything else. And I listed out all of the Discord stuff that I'd done. Also, Liz, please keep in mind, this is spring of 2020 when Nano staff is asking for MLs with experience with Discord and Zoom if they'll teach other MLs how to use Discord and Zoom for their regions. And I was like, I will totally help with this because I've been using Discord for my region for the last few years.
Right.
And during this conversation, and I lay out with Sarah everything that I'd done over the Discord, and Sarah was like, but that doesn't really count.
Did they ever acknowledge that you had valid reasons to not use their site? And now...
Nope.
So you update your website to make it worse. One of the ways in which it's worse is that people with visual impairments literally couldn't read it. And then you punish them for it for doing additional unpaid labor by telling them that their contributions didn't count because they literally couldn't use your website. And this wasn't the first time that features of NaNoWriMo's website were built without any sensitivity as to what the users might be experiencing. Back in 2017, NaNoWriMo added a game to their website called Ivan the Icy, a game meant to motivate writers to increase their word counts through gamification.
About 2017, I think it was, they decided to do a promo to build up, I believe, for the main event, where they decided to make this guy, they called him Ivan the Icy. He was a little cartoon character, and he went around telling people that they had to, like, he planted a bomb somewhere and they had to defuse it by composing different I don't remember exactly what you had to do to defuse the bomb because frankly I deleted half the emails, but the point of it was that if you didn't, the bomb would explode all over your computer screen, make a horrible sound, all this stuff. This was right after the couple of terrorist bombings that happened that same year in Paris. There were several countries that year that had bombings in large public places. There were people in the community who had to pull people out of like the wreckage in the subways of that bombing that were getting these emails. And they just thought it was a great time. They had just no perception whatsoever. And when they were told about it, it took them weeks to months to issue an apology that was the same kind of like soggy cracker apology we've seen from them over and over again. An organization that does that, I can only go so far with the whole, oh, they didn't know what they were doing argument. Like, there's so much intentionality in recent years. I can say all I want. Oh, in 2010, it was great. But in recent years, there's been so much of this intentional middle fingering of writers everywhere that, I mean, the only option is to put the whole organization to bed. Just bury it, put a stake through its heart, and move on.
Much like the Ingot controversy, NaNoWriMo apologized for this game, removed it from their website, and again, if it had been an isolated incident, maybe an apology would suffice, but it was just another data point in a long-running pattern of mismanagement. This situation with the Ivan the Icy game showed an insensitivity on NaNoWriMo's part that had been building for a while. Kat's situation regarding accessibility on the website showed a clear case of ableism from NaNoWriMo, and most recently in 2023 and 2024, the new municipal liaison agreement showed a desire for control. And the ways that they treated NaNoWriMo as a US-centric organization whose communications you weren't allowed to translate into any other languages, that could also be easily interpreted as racist. Now, it's worth mentioning that Kilby, NaNoWriMo's current executive director, is a woman of color herself. I mean, at least I think she is, considering how much she tries to obscure her real identity, but from what she said publicly on her Instagram and such, and from how she looks in her AI-generated headshot, she is a black woman, but regardless, even with her perspective, NaNoWriMo's leadership still received allegations of racism. So, some key players to keep in mind here. Heather, username Dragonchild, was the head forum moderator for the NaNoWriMo website. When she left this position, her successor was a woman named Letitia, who is black. The other player in this situation is a forum moderator named Sama J.
In October of 2023, the situation with Heather kicked off. Or the knowledge of the situation with Heather kicked off when NaNoWriMo staff forced her to make a public apology. The situation with Heather is that she used to be, okay, first of all, I'm going to preface this with, this is my understanding of the situation. Heather was the Nano staff member before Letitia for being in charge of the moderators. And they were not paying her enough for the amount of work that she was doing. So she's like, I can do this part-time, but you're going to need to hire somebody else to do this part-time. And they said no, they didn't want to do that. And so they replaced her with Letitia and didn't tell her that they were replacing her until after she had trained Letitia. And then, hi, here's your replacement, which was not the best way to handle it. There were a few other moderators who had put their hat in the ring to be promoted to that staff position, one of whom was Sama J. That is the Nano name that she used. That's what I'm going to call her, Sama J. And in the 2022 situation, with the sponsor situation, Sama was either told to step down as moderator or she was forcefully unmodded. And that was because she had a history of being, at best, aggressive, very, very antagonistic and on the attack a lot of the time. It got to the point where, like, you know that these are the issues. Why is she still allowed to moderate? You keep saying that this is just the way she is, but why is who this person is allowed to moderate the way that she's moderating? So she was demodded. And the reason this comes into play is because we find out in August last year, when she makes a comment on the forums of Letitia was a diversity hire and she knows that for a fact. Deleted her account and like just kind of skedaddled, but she started talking on TikTok. And these TikTok videos are no longer around. I don't know if anybody saved them, but when I saw her talking on TikTok, I hadn't watched the full videos yet when I sent them on to Letitia, just to be like, this might be a problem that you guys need to keep an eye on. Because no, Nano can't control what people are saying off-site, but at the same time, if a former moderator is going off on something, maybe you just need to keep an eye to know what's being said. In the videos, Sama shows her proof that Letitia was supposedly a diversity hire, and it is a Facebook Messenger conversation with herself and Heather after Heather was no longer staff. And they're mostly just complaining about the situation and complaining that Letitia isn't really doing a very good job, which I'm not going to weigh in on that at this point. That's not really the scope of this. But at one point, Sama makes a comment of saying that she would have been better for the role, and Heather seems to agree with her. And then that's when Heather makes the comment of, I'm pretty sure Letitia was hired because she's black.
The giant NaNoWriMo Google Doc, which I'll link below and is available at the website nanoscandal.com, includes a big timeline of things that happened and how those things unfolded. This document, which was created collaboratively by many of the people from the NaNoWriMo forums and the NaNoWriMo subreddit, they briefly cover this controversy. The Google Doc refers to Sama J as Mod Y. It says, June to July-ish 2023, Moderator Y starts parroting on the forums that they have it on good authority that Letitia, who is black, is a diversity hire. Moderator Y is called out on this comment. At the time, we interpreted this comment as a crappy one to make, but also believed Moderator Y was salty about not getting the lead forum moderator position because they also applied for it. August-ish 2023, Moderator Y deletes their NaNoWriMo account, stops MLing, and goes torched earth on their TikTok, revealing a ton of private message conversations from Heather, the previous lead forums moderator. These messages generally vent about the forums and moderation. However, one of those messages is Moderator Y saying that you, the other person in this conversation, aka Heather, had once said that Letitia was a diversity hire. This is the supposed good authority of Moderator Y's comments. Moderator Y eventually deletes these TikToks, but not before someone reports the TikToks to NaNoWriMo HQ. Early October, NaNoWriMo HQ immediately removes Heather as a volunteer mod, suspends her mod account, and drags their feet on when Heather can post a public apology. Heather finally says screw it and posts her apology in early October. A ton of people take one racist comment as crucifixion and want her banned from the site, even as her old account. Heather has privately apologized to Letitia by this point and is still around as a regular participant under her old Dragon Child account. So basically the allegation is that Heather or Dragon Child, former head moderator, told Sama J or Mod Y, a woman who also applied for the head moderator position but didn't get it, that Letitia, who did get the position, was just a diversity hire. And then Mod Y went on to TikTok and vented about all of this, revealing herself to the world in a bunch of videos that are now deleted. These situations, the racism, ableism, Ivan the Icy game, those were all examples of NaNoWriMo messing up, but being willing to address those mistakes and take accountability for them. Similar to how they handled the Inkit sponsorship scandal, it seems like at the very least they did learn from their mistakes. But as we segue into our next section, you'll see why, no, they really didn't. As the Master Google Doc explains, when talking about the issue with Heather and the racist comment about Letitia as a diversity hire, note the issue here isn't that Heather had to make a public apology or that Heather's comment wasn't racist enough or public enough. The issue is that NaNoWriMo HQ was swift to act on one private racist comment while letting a situation involving allegations over minor safety sit while the involved party remained in power. And that is interesting. While NaNoWriMo headquarters was putting out all of these fires one by one, they were allowing the biggest fire of all to spread unchecked. And that is what leads us into the most horrifying section of this video. Child exploitation. This is by far the worst thing that has ever happened in the NaNoWriMo organization, and it's also the thing that leadership did the least to address. It's worth noting that NaNoWriMo has multiple forums and websites devoted specifically to young writers. One of these places is the Young Writers Program, which often works with schools. It works with English teachers to get teenagers interested in writing novels. The Young Writers Program, or YWP, was a feature that NaNoWriMo was heavily promoting, but it wasn't very well organized behind the scenes. For example, multiple people I spoke with told me that the YWP had no background checks, no mandated reporter training, it had no verification of identities, it required no proof of teacher certification. It was yet another place where unpaid volunteers were overworked in promotion of the group.
My little sister was getting ready to try her hand at writing, so I signed her up for the Young Writers Program before the grooming allegations came out. The actual Google classrooms were run by people that weren't actually qualified to do anything. Apparently you could just go and you could simply say that you were a teacher. You could start your own classroom, and then within the classroom you can say that you get a menu of grades, which is pretty upsetting to me because with the grooming allegations, it kind of feels like you're literally picking the age of children off of a menu, which is you're literally
and there was no
serving up whatever you
verification
want.
that anyone was
There
actually a
is
teacher.
no
You could just sign
verification.
up and say, "Hi, I'm a teacher." They wouldn't ask
Yeah.
what school do you teach at, what grade do you there. You didn't
Yeah.
have to provide any ID or anything. Oh my god,
You didn't have to provide anything. Now, on
that's not
top
safe.
of that, if you were someone who, let's say you were an 18-year-old, you were with a group of 18-year-olds, and you just kept acting up or you were being disrespectful or what have you, you could then start your own classroom if you were kicked out, say that you were a teacher, and then continue bullying and being disrespectful, but you're in charge.
Some of it was bullying, some of it
Oh,
was
got it.
racism, some of it was inappropriate sexual commentary from other teenagers, not from adults. But when they tried to report it, it would just be kind of brushed under the rug, and it was just never actually handled. And a lot of the YWP people have put together a site where they shared their own experiences anonymously. And a lot of them have said that Mariah in particular did bully them. And when she's the one in charge, it's not actually bullying at that point, it is abuse.
And when I first came on, they also wanted us to go around to the schools and really promote the Young Writers Program. And I missed the memo where we suddenly didn't have to do that. So I was doing that. Anyway, I didn't go to all the schools, but I would talk to teachers when I had a chance and try to get them to be involved. And some of them were, which weighed on my conscience later on. Because when I found out how unsafe it was for kids, I knew I personally directed kids there.
Thorne, the writer that I interviewed over email, was formerly a part of the YWP. I asked them about their experiences in that group, and here is what they had to say. I joined NaNoWriMo's Young Writers Program, YWP, in October 2022 when I was 16. The YWP was a separate site designed for under 18s with separate forums designed for 13 to 18-year-olds. I joined the main site that December when the YWP forums were paused for the moderator's Christmas break. However, I never used the main site's writing capabilities, only using it as a backup for when the YWP forums were closed during the November fires. Pre-fires, it's complicated. I loved the YWP while I was there, but it was horribly under-moderated. It basically ran on community moderation from teenagers. People got ran off the site a couple times. It was a mess. I have really fond memories of it, but we were completely let down by the adult moderation that was supposed to protect us. Post-fires, fuck them. Excuse my language, but I could never have imagined how much this organization seemed determined to make things worse at every opportunity. The only positive changes have been minimal at best, and the organization completely refused to communicate with users and volunteers. The only change to the YWP was turning off the ability to make educator accounts, and the last communications on site were in December. I was using the main site forum PM system to communicate with one of my YWP friends after leaving the site in October due to the terrible handling of a predator on the forums, and as a result, I was poking around on the rest of the forums there, and I stumbled on a retrospective thread talking about some of the issues that had been going out on the main site. I realized that I didn't feel like the YWP was a priority based on my experience there, and explained some details of the October situation. They did this to the YWP too. When a message was sent outlining evidence of a predator, it was ignored for 3 days if I remember correctly, and initially responded to with, "We reviewed this account and found nothing that broke our rules," only after it was posted publicly on the forums. They did take the account down, but only hours later, once we had made a major fuss with pretty much everyone who knew the situation calling the mods out, and with no further communication for 2 days, which sent us into a spiral of panic and teens leaving as they didn't feel safe on the platform. The next day, Shelby Gibbs responded to that message with this: "Hi there, I wanted to speak to this directly since it relates to a lot of the youth safety issues people are bringing up, and YWP has different systems. First off, we did indeed look into the participant that was flagged on YWP. Rob and Mariah discussed and investigated on October 3rd. They responded on October 4th. Our search into their history and their other social media accounts did not find evidence that they were a predator or someone else than the person they claimed to be. We were wrong to say that nothing crossed the line set by our codes of conduct, and we should have issued a reminder about those codes. However, no violation crossed the line that would require banning. We kept a close eye on this account following the reports and encouraged participants to follow their guts and keep a wide berth. After the account was suspended due to user flags, we agreed their account should not be reinstated. My response was simply, 'Thank you, I know what occurred was a drastic situation. I am very thankful for the extra support YWP is receiving.' Because I was 17 and tired and at that point didn't want to start a fight, the adults in the thread, meanwhile, went all in on this response, calling it out for the bullshit that it was, and I didn't know what to do. So I went to a group I was in at the time with a few YWP people and posted a message basically saying, 'Hey, I've been discussing the YWP on the adult site and now the COO is involved.' So we discussed, and a few people went to the thread and shared some of their stories with the adults who were horrified. The YWP is a completely separate site, and we didn't really talk to adults. They thought the YWP was one of the priorities. So the next day the board gets involved, and by this point the situation spread to the YWP forums and everyone is panicking, and some people were saying stuff about the mods, taking the piss a bit but making jokes, and then Mariah started banning people. She banned 3 users, the latter 2 vocal defenders of the first user. Immediately this got reported on the main site and everything just went to shit. I returned to the YWP forums for what in retrospect was the last time, and I started yelling. It was late, I was tired, and I felt like I'd started a mess I didn't understand. I stayed up until, past midnight. I only put my phone down when I couldn't stay awake any longer, and in the 7 hours I was asleep, the forums were closed for the last time. I missed all the goodbyes. A lot of people had other stuff, but there are some people I never spoke to after November.
And I made it clear to her that the way she shut down the Young Writers program, she removed a whole community from these kids overnight. Kids who were sometimes troubled. Because they just shut down that whole part overnight. They had their own forums, and without warning, it was just, you're done. And they had no way of contacting their friends again. And for some of them, because you're supposed to be able to join the forums at 13, and you age out after 18. So that's enough years of making a friends,
Right, yeah.
online. And that could be really traumatic. And it was. For some of them, it was really, really hard.
Woo! The main story, though, that we're focusing on here, however, did not even happen in the Young Writers program. Just to make that clear, since I've seen some confusion out there about this, the following story, which we're going into next, took place in the Christian Teens Together, or CTT forum, which is completely separate from the Young Writers program, but is another NaNoWriMo community specifically designed for writers under 18 years old. In 2023, multiple teenagers came forward to express that the moderator of the Christian Teens Together forum, whom they referred to as Mod X, was behaving inappropriately with them, which included behavior like directing them toward adult websites with explicit content. Instead of immediately firing this mod, instead of believing the victim's allegations and taking instant action, NaNoWriMo spent the better part of a year trying to silence these minors and bury these allegations, all while keeping Mod X on their team as a forum moderator. Multiple people I interviewed told me that Mod X's username on the forums was Cinnamon Fridge, and that this wasn't this person's first rodeo when it came to predatory online behavior.
So Cinnamon Fridge is mod X, I think, in the board write-up. One of my big issues is when abusers are allowed to go unchallenged because people won't use their names and they won't call them out by name. And they'll just say like, oh, the former moderator or that type of thing. And some people have conflated the mod X situation with the YWP situation. But those are two completely separate issues. There's a whole rabbit hole around this. Are you sure you want to hear this one?
I do, yes, yes.
Okay.
This moderator was interacting with under 18s on the Nano forums proper and was kind of asking them to come to their like adult fetish site, which is like wholly obviously inappropriate. When folks came to Nano with these concerns, I believe they said they first reported them in May 2023. Nano apparently looked into it and apparently said, there's nothing wrong here.
What they were doing was they were advertising a super inappropriate, god-awful adult fetish site on the website that was clearly their own, the way they were talking about it. They weren't trying to hide that. They were clearly taking credit for it, and they were advertising it by literally complaining about the security settings and how all of these kids were just getting around the security settings on the website. Wink, wink, by the way, here's the link at the end of the post to the website. So you can see what I mean. It was very obviously luring kids in.
Putting together the Cinnamon Fridge lore has been a rabbit hole. Cinnamon Fridge marries somebody named Penny. Sometimes she comes up as Penguin. At one point, Penny dies. So every time that Penny comes up online, we have discovered it's Cinnamon Fridge pretending to be Penny. Then we're like, well, if Penny isn't real, like, is Danny real? And we like really started thinking about this. And then Cinnamon Fridge comes in and she does a thing that she frequently does, which is trauma dump on it. Danny came over because we were talking about what to do after I die, because she was dying. She was dying. This was a thing that was known. Cinnamon Fridge was dying.
Is she still
so
dying?
Danny came over. She technically, we're pretty sure that this time she actually died.
Wait,
but
Cinnamon Fridge is dead?
We think, because this death hasn't followed the same pattern as all the other deaths. But equally, we wouldn't actually be surprised if she crops up as like her dead wife's niece again.
Okay, wait, hold on.
I told you it was a ride.
So, Cinnamon Fridge is the same person as Mod X who got in trouble for grooming children in the Christian Teens Together forum. This person has been married to 2 women who have both died, and now people think... So, was there an investigation done? Like...
No!
There's never been... So, nobody even knows if this moderator is even alive anymore?
No! Like, that's why we were so upset with NaNoWriMo, because they told us that they'd look into it, and then they didn't, because they're like, oh, she's dying anyway.
What I witnessed, that individual may have died last year. There was a whole investigation that would take a couple 100,000 words to explain, but they're pretty sure, the people I've spoken to, that they're dead. I don't really care if they're dead or not. The important thing is that they're not abusing kids.
I think the first time that Cinnamon Fridge really crossed my radar is they rolled out this chat room type of feature on Discourse during the April 2023 camp, which of course being, real-time chat moving along at lightning speed. A lot of stuff happens, and we saw a lot of the younger people getting involved in that and messaging a mile a minute, which, I think that was really cool as a concept. Issue is Cinnamon Fridge was a moderator. And there was one particular person who, because I helped to run I think it's called like the NaNoWriMo fan server or whatever. We were all sort of flagging this thing that this underage person who had some real struggles at home and stuff based on what we could glean was being sort of like focused on by Cinnamon Fridge.
Oh, okay.
You ever get that gut feeling where you're just like, something isn't right here and I can't place it? And Danny, who isn't a real person, you could say that with like confidence and stuff. Danny appeared, who was someone who was under some sort of like guardianship of Cinnamon Fridge, and they would like.
Danny is a different user.
Danny is also Cinnamon Fridge.
Oh, so this was like an alternate account of Cinnamon Fridge claiming to be a teenager named Danny.
Oh, well, the age was dubious. They regressed to this like teenager state. Headquarters knew about this. we've had it confirmed to us that they knew about this and allowed it to happen.
So this is Cinnamon Fridge under multiple different usernames, and this wasn't all in the NaNoWriMo forums. They would just regularly go to different forums and take over various forums. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is
so
how
this
I
was a long-term pattern.
a lot of it was just, I have expertise in this forum software, which you don't. Which when they were moving to the discourse forums around 2019, was kind of like an issue. There's posts in the ML Facebook group that I have yet to be kicked out of, but I expect to be kicked out of when this happens, that are like Heather being saying that Cinnamon Fridge has helped with rolling out emails or something and giving tech advice and stuff. They were deeply ingrained in this process and went from being a municipal liaison at one point to kind of just having this like weird moderator role where everyone was like, we don't know how to use this software, here you go. No volunteers at NaNoWriMo were ever background checked. I was never background checked. They encouraged us, well, pre-pandemic, to go into schools, engage with our local communities, work with children without a single background check. I could have been anybody doing this. So to allow this person access to kids that were making thousands of posts a day, generating probably hundreds of reports a day, to be honest, without any kind of like checking in on them, just because they said, yeah, I know how this works, I'll do it for free. I mean, we've heard directly from Xander, who was another one of the moderators, that their entire plan when this came out, after trying to hide it for months, was just, she's gonna die soon, might as well just let that happen. So Cinnamon Fridge had a fiance called Penny who died in 2019, like actually died. Which
so Penny
is
was a real person.
Penny was 100% a real person. I found the obituary. I promise I'm not a stalker. But Penny keeps being resurrected and used, and like usernames keep being used by Cinnamon Fridge as like oh no, Penny has taken over the forums and stuff. Danny
so
was
are they pretending that Penny's alive still, or are they like pretending that Penny's a ghost and trying to like get people into their weird ghost role play? Like, I'm so lost.
They're pretending Penny is alive and that they are Penny and that they, as in Cinnamon Fridge, are actually dead.
So is Cinnamon Fridge dead?
Now they are.
Now, okay, now they're dead. Okay.
Yeah. Which happened early this year, I think. There is actually an obituary. It's the most legitimate death because family have acknowledged it.
So Cinnamon Fridge is dead now, so okay. So they just kind of enjoyed lying on the internet. Is what I'm getting here.
Yeah, but then they'd start dying off and Danny would appear and be like, hey, Cinnamon Fridge just died. Could you donate to the GoFundMe?
Wait, so Cinnamon Fridge faked their death multiple times before they died for real?
Yep. Every single person.
But we're sure they're dead for real this time.
This is the most legitimate death you're going to see.
Okay.
In terms of the family never acknowledged any of the prior fake deaths.
Okay.
But this obituary was shared. I was part of Christian Teens thread. Probably when I was 14, 15 for a little while. I dabbled there. They're all quite sheltered.
What kind of behavior was Cinnamon Fridge exhibiting towards minors that had people alarmed?
A lot of like private interactions one-on-one.
Okay.
Specifically that one user I mentioned earlier and stuff who was, clearly going through a lot at home. And they kind of disappeared a few times, would delete their account, come back. They were too close with this person. Like, I'm 22 and I wouldn't be that close to someone that age, let alone, nearing 40 and being that close to someone that age. There are a lot of allusions to forums that had similar features, like, oh yeah, on my forum I have Monster High this, Monster High that. We do the similar thing on my forum and stuff. And you just have to look up the username and you find the forum. And
okay, so they were basically when if I understand this right, when there would be teenagers that would talk about like interests they have, Cinnamon Fridge would be like, oh, I have another forum where we talk about those interests too, and the forum they would be talking about was one that was sexually explicit and was not appropriate for people this age to be on.
Yeah, similar in that way, but also like they have these threads of like posting lyrics from my favorite song. They'd be like, I do this on my forum all the time. And so on. And
so they'd keep talking about their forum that was clearly an adults only forum, but they kept talking about it to underage kids and getting them interested in it, I guess, which is
I think my most sort of stipulation I saw on their site was, you can join under 18 with parental consent. Or, oh, I found out this 13-year-old had just joined my forum. Oh no. Or I have signed consent from this person's pet. No. It went very quickly from, oh, well, my first experience doing a real, life writing wasn't the best, but whatever, to, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't get groomed.
So how did NaNoWriMo respond to this? You have a moderator who's been accused of behaving inappropriately with minors. You have multiple teenagers alleging this when it's already extremely unlikely and very difficult for abuse victims to come forward so soon. They're trusting you, the adults in their life, with this information, trusting that you are going to act in their best interest. The moderator in question is also a person who has been known for years to behave erratically online, has been antagonizing people on the internet for decades. This is a person who regularly uses alternate sock puppet accounts to fake their identity, a person who regularly fakes their own death, a person who tries to create drama by pretending they're alive and dead sometimes, pretending they're a different person, which already shows that they don't really have a reputation for being an upfront and honest user. And now, after all of that, they've been accused of this abuse. This person is Red Flag City. This person should have been fired yesterday, before yesterday. The best time to fire Mod X would have been in the past. The second best time to fire Mod X would be right when these allegations came out. But that is not how NaNoWriMo HQ responded to the situation. Instead, they went all, there's no Warren Bossing say on this, okay?
This moderator, though, also was a forum administrator. They were a very big part of the website's rebuilding and creating of the new forums. They actually programmed a lot of it. So when it was reported, these concerns back in May of 2023, they panicked. NaNoWriMo panicked because this person, they couldn't just demote them without, they thought, also breaking the site. They couldn't actually officially say, well, we can't reprimand them because we might break things if we do.
They couldn't just hire a different web developer.
Yeah, the leader of the forums gave an interview with my group right after in December. They knew that they needed to get on it. And actually, they wanted to fire that moderator beforehand because they were getting really impossible to work with. They had a big attitude and stuff. This gave them the perfect excuse to, but then they figured out that they didn't know enough about coding to understand whether or not they could safely pull this person out of the picture without breaking things. Because I guess they had scripts running through their forum account, which I don't even understand. I build websites and I'm like, what? People started getting a little angry because hold on, we reported this thing and this person is still a moderator. They are still there. They are, by the way, a volunteer. They were not a paid
So this person
staff
wasn't
member.
paid.
And they had that much power. So people are starting to get mad, and the kids are starting to get mad because they were stepping forward and reporting this stuff. That's how anyone found out.
Because they were vicious. They were trying to invalidate people that brought this up. It just was this hive mind of don't talk about it, don't tell anyone about it. It does suck to see a lot of them now trying to rewrite history. Now it's getting media attention to try and like rectify it, to be like, oh, I did so much to fight this when I know full well they sat there and, you know, starved of oxygen and often went for the rest of us who were speaking out and sort of muddied the waters on the forums too. Sarah at one point was involved in the decision to put the forums on lockdown. Our forums had operating hours in line with NaNoWriMo's like opening and closing and stuff, which was really weird. She was also the one in the Discord server that was like starved of oxygen.
Mariah was really bad. She'd step in and just shut those kids down in the rudest way. And then Sarah Mackey, she also was involved in it, and she was the one that was basically our boss, the volunteers boss. The amount of responsibilities everyone had was way too much, and so I will give them that. It's not an excuse for how they handled it, but it's definitely a recipe for disaster. They would mute them, chastise them, yell at them publicly, shut things, like disable commenting on certain threads. It was really pretty hostile. And some of those kids, they couldn't reach out to anyone else. They were experiencing horrible things, but they couldn't get the help they needed. They couldn't even tell their parents because if they told their parents, they were afraid they'd get in trouble. So this built and built and built. And then right before last year's November event, it really started blowing up. And that's when things got especially hostile with various people. And it's just forum fighting kind of stuff, but it just got ugly. And most people did not forget most of the things that were said. Oh, and deliberately saying that they wanted to deprive the oxygen of the situation. Yeah, that was Sarah Mackey. She said that they needed to deprive the situation of oxygen by closing topics, stuff like that, to make it so that people had nowhere to complain. Then it got really loud because we finally just reached out to the board and they did listen. Oh, I should mention that back in May and between then and November, people did contact the FBI too. People were reaching out to authorities and still, there just wasn't enough to report, so nothing really came of it. But then early mid-November, the NaNoWriMo board got involved, and it turns out they're really hands-off. They are probably the most hands-off board I've ever heard of for such a big organization and such a small staff. They meet so infrequently and they just like check out in between. It's like I'm on a couple boards and I just don't get it. That's when things started really escalating and they shut down the most of the forum activity.
I was in the municipal liaison Discord server, which was ironically enough made by Cinnamon Fridge.
Oh, wow.
This thing that was used to hold unofficial office hours by Sarah and Grant on multiple occasions, and they would appear on this server. Now, they claimed it was unofficial, but they'd be there, and we were told directly in this server to starve these claims of oxygen and to refrain from informing our regions about what was going on. Because the forums were just too long, and no one had time to read that. Now, I was kicked out of the
they
server.
explicitly told you, like, don't spread the word about this. They told you to, oh my god, okay.
Starving of oxygen. Yeah. I was kicked out of the server for leaking things, also known as I was taking a backup, because, like, this server was made by this person.
Yeah.
There were 3 of us that were kicked out. All 3 of us were ironically autistics. We are very much towing a line. I haven't really gone and said, hey, I'm the person that got kicked out, because I don't want to get thrown out of further spaces.
Right.
But there was definitely just this claim of like starvative oxygen. There were so many people in there who would never have passed a background check in the first place. Eventually it just hit the point where it had to go public, because otherwise they were going to keep ignoring it.
I believe that this group of concerned people tried to talk to Nano HQ at least 2 more times before emailing the board with these concerns. The board very quickly took over. I believe they were told in like late October and shut the forums down. However, I think the board continued to react poorly and handle the situation poorly by just closing the forums and saying just kind of, oh, it's not going to happen here, so it's not our issue. And I think that kind of didn't answer people's concerns, because people were far more concerned about how Nano was handling this and not that it actually happened. Like, it wasn't a person who was within HQ, it was a moderator, yes, but it was the lack of care that Nano kind of reacted to these allegations with that really, really bothered people to a very fair degree. Like, I still think they haven't addressed it properly, quite frankly. All of the potential like solutions that they've offered, like the forums closing, like, running background checks on people, have all been kind of like slapdash solutions.
I got selfishly a little scared at that point. It was like, well, I want to make sure everything's safe, but I also want to be far away from this because I don't want my own reputation tainted by my position. Because at the time when things were starting to spread, they kept saying that, the staff handled this wrong. Most people assume that municipal liaisons are staff. So they lumped us into this. So I didn't want people being like, oh, you did that, huh? No, we're not going there.
It was very cowardly.
Yeah.
This is not what a human being should do in a scenario like that. This is, you really have to create not just a safe space in general, but a space that's safe enough for people to be authentic, because that's what creativity is about. All this stuff, sort of the running theme throughout all of it, is that it's just adding additional levels of fake to something that should be authentic. It's the constant defense of the sketchy as fuck thing, instead of just saying, yes, we have a problem. We are going to fix the problem. They just didn't want, for whatever reason, they just didn't want to fix the problem. They just thought everything was going to be fine until they crashed into the iceberg. And there's no logical, maybe I'm giving people too much credit for being smart in this particular sector of society. But like, I can't see how a thinking person who's in this every day can continue to pick the bad option. I don't have a lot of sympathy for these people.
So there's so much wrong here. First, let's talk about how MLs, who, remember, are unpaid volunteers, had to worry for their own reputations in this situation because the public was told that NaNoWriMo staff wasn't reacting well to the controversy. Most regular people hearing about this for the first time don't know who's staff and who's a volunteer, and it's not fair to put the volunteers in the position when they didn't actually have any power to fix the situation. Then, can we talk about Mariah Brennan and Sarah Mackey? How they wanted to starve these claims of oxygen, how they repeatedly told people not to talk about them, how they did everything in their power to cover it up, how multiple people reported Mariah yelling at them, shutting them down when they tried to come forward about actual trauma, and also how they were like, well, Mod X is gonna die soon anyway, so let's let them just keep abusing minors. What? First off, how did you know that they were going to die when this is the exact mod that has faked their own death and pretended to be multiple dead people under fake accounts? Second, we're all gonna die one day in the future. That doesn't mean that right now, here, today, in this moment, we can let people go on hurting children in the here and now. What? And finally, after all of this, the result was just, okay, shut down the forums, we're done. The forums and the health of the website was apparently so important in 2023 that they had to cover up these allegations rather than firing the mod, apparently because this mod had so much access to the website's code and was doing so much to keep it together. But then, once the allegations were out in the open, actually fuck the forum, shut the website down, just go to a writing retreat in person. How does any of this make sense? Wow, that was a lot, Savvy, you might be thinking. We can't be done yet, though, can we? That was all last year, and NaNoWriMo's still here, isn't it? Why are we talking about this now, in the fall of 2024? Did something happen after all of this to bring this to everyone's attention? The AI controversy. In September 2024, which at the time that I'm filming this is right now, NaNoWriMo faced a new controversy. Their statement regarding whether or not it's okay to use AI when writing your novel for the challenge. What's strange is that the AI controversy is what got most people's attention. Social media and various forums started blowing up with people angry about NaNoWriMo's stance on artificial intelligence, which I'll get to in a moment, and it was very justified rage. NaNoWriMo was absolutely stupid about this. But what's strange is that this was the tipping point. This is what made mainstream news finally pay attention to the dumpster fire that was going on. And not even just mainstream news, alternative sources like YouTube too. I mean, look at my channel right now. Look at what I'm doing. I'm here with you talking about this now, not last year. Why? Because much like many of you, I was one of those people who kind of forgot that NaNoWriMo even had an official organization and was just treating it like an informal challenge the way your favorite incel might treat No Nut November. It took until the AI controversy for people to go, wait a minute, there's an organization here? What? There's an official NaNoWriMo? And yeah, that's how I fell down this mess of a rabbit hole. On September 4th, 2024, NaNoWriMo released the following statement to answer the question, what is NaNoWriMo's official position on artificial intelligence? NaNoWriMo does not explicitly support any specific approach to writing, nor does it explicitly condemn any approach, including the use of AI. NaNoWriMo's mission is to provide the structure, community, and encouragement to help people use their voices, achieve creative goals, and build new worlds on and off the page. We also want to be clear in our belief that the categorical condemnation of artificial intelligence has classist and ableist undertones, and that questions around the use of AI tie to questions around privilege. Beyond that, we see value in sharing resources and information about AI and any emerging technology, issue, or discussion that is relevant to the writing community as a whole. It's healthy for writers to be curious about what's new and forthcoming and what might impact their career space or pursuit of the craft. For those reasons, we absolutely do not condemn AI, and we recognize and respect writers who believe AI are the tools for them. We recognize that some members of our community stand staunchly against AI for themselves, and that's perfectly fine. As individuals, we have the freedom to make our own decisions. That statement was so disgustingly vague and non-committal, so we're going to break that down. My views on AI as a whole are very complicated. AI is such a huge and loaded term at this point. At its core, AI means artificial intelligence, and that encompasses a huge variety of technology. So this is where I might lose some people. I'm gonna need everyone to bear with me here for my explanation because I'm going somewhere with this and it still involves NaNoWriMo being wrong, okay? If we are to take NaNoWriMo's statement completely literally, like completely at face value with no extra baggage, no reading between the lines, no context as to why they're trying to say this in the first place, the statement in a vacuum is not actually wrong, it is indeed ableist to say that no one should ever use any technology that could be classified as artificial intelligence. The problem is that AI is such a loaded term nowadays, and everyone was right to be skeptical of NaNoWriMo's statement. Some screen reader technologies, some dictation softwares do meet the technical definition of AI, and some writers do need these programs as accessibility aids. My personal view on AI, the whole thing, is that it just really needs some government regulation, like immediately. The issue that many creative people have with AI, like image and text generators, is that they pull from the creations of writers and artists without providing any payment to those original creators, and then they use those creations to generate new output, which users then sometimes turn around to sell for their own profit, plus it leads to companies using these technologies to create a worse output and also not give a person a job. Plus, considering many generative AI programs also charge users for the platform, it leads to the tech bros running these companies making money off of stolen material. I'm not against the technology existing, but I do think it needs to be taken to court. Like, I'll admit it, I have used AI programs in the past for fun. I say for fun because I'm trying to make it clear that I have never generated my text for a book with it. Like, all text of book, I've written it all myself. Those are my words from my head, right? What I mean is that, like, a couple years ago, I made a few videos using some of the early AI programs, like the ones that were popular before ChatGPT blew up, and I used them to generate text on various topics to show how weird and surreal and non-human it sounds. Like, if you've seen my Shrek in the City video, or the ones like that, it was meant to be funny. And back when I used to live stream a couple years ago, we'd sometimes play games with ChatGPT, like we'd ask it to generate generic influencer apologies as a funny bit, things like that. So I'm not gonna claim to be like a perfectly clean person who has never touched any AI software before, but I am condemning, I want to make it very clear, I am condemning using AI to write your novel. That's plagiarism, okay? So my point is, machine learning as a concept is kind of cool, but with the way it's blown up and the ways companies have been treating it, it's actually extremely unethical and disgusting. If companies like OpenAI can't afford to pay for the materials they're using to train their bots, then they can't afford to run a company right now. This seems to be a territory that, like, existing copyright and IP laws didn't see coming, so now we're in this, like, legal and ethical world of the unknown. But there are pieces of this puzzle that are extremely black and white. One of those pieces is this: if you write the text of your novel itself with AI-generated text, and then you turn around and sell that novel, which was generated using other people's words and not your own, then you are guilty of plagiarism. And I'm pretty sure that was the scenario that people were talking about when they wanted to know NaNoWriMo's stance on AI in the first place. Let's look at why people would even be wondering about this. Why would people even be asking this question? Much like the Ingot controversy, it seems that the situation stemmed from a sponsorship. One of NaNoWriMo's sponsors is a software called Pro Writing Aid. On Pro Writing Aid's website, under the tools for finding inspiration, it says, "Beat writer's block for good with tools to help you start or continue writing. With Pro Writing Aid, the right words are always at your fingertips. Learn more about AI Sparks." It then shows an animation of the writer using AI Sparks as a tool to generate the next bit of text for their story. The implication here is that to beat writer's block, you can just use Pro Writing Aid to write the next bit of text for you, instead of having to come up with your own words yourself. You know, you can just plagiarize. This partnership had NaNoWriMo participants very worried. NaNoWriMo was always a challenge to write 50,000 words, 50,000 of your own words in 1 month. People cared always about writing all 50,000 words in November, and participants would even jokingly refer to it as cheating if they would start like on the last day of October instead. If writing 50,000 of your own words in 30 days isn't the challenge, then what is? What is even the point of any of this? The discussion was never really about using AI as a disability aid. The issue here wasn't what people were actually asking. When users wanted to know how NaNoWriMo felt about AI, they didn't mean, are you okay with someone using a tool like dictation software or a screen reader are using tools to help you write for accessibility purposes? They meant, are you okay with people using things like ChatGPT or Pro Writing Aid to generate the text of your actual novel? And NaNoWriMo did not provide an answer to that. They didn't even really address that topic at all, maybe out of fear of compromising their sponsorship with Pro Writing Aid. The vagueness of the statement and Nano's avoidance of the actual issue got a lot of writers justifiably upset. Some writers even found Nano's statement itself to be ableist because it seemed like they were using disability as a shield to avoid addressing their own shady sponsorship deals. For this section of the video, I interviewed an independent author named SAVYWRITES, who, as a blind woman herself, regularly uses what could be classified as AI technology as an accessibility aid, but was pretty insulted at NaNoWriMo's refusal to address the real question here.
Hi, I'm SAVYWRITES. I am a blind sci-fi author. it is very rare that disability is ever mentioned in the writing industry. I don't see them like trying to uplift disabled writers in general. I see that they have tried with other forms of marginalized and diverse communities. I've noticed, and great. I think it's fantastic that everybody tries to uplift other marginalized communities, not only disabled communities, but we're constantly ignored. All of a sudden, they throw out this statement in defense of AI. And I found that that was one of the most ableist things ever. It's like, oh, so we depend on the theft machine in order to create art that is worthy of reading. Oh, okay. I also found it extremely vague on purpose.
Yeah.
Precisely because it would raise controversy. Like, if you're going to bring up disabilities, you can't be vague. You can't, because you're just like shooting yourself in the foot if you do. Because, okay, sure, I am blind and I use assistive AI to help myself. Screen readers is not the same to use a screen reader or an image, even like I would push it a bit and say an image generator, like an image description generator. Yes, like you put a picture in there and it describes it to you. I would say that's helpful. To me, it is, because I can't just Google a thing and look at photos and learn. Obviously I can't. I have an idea of what the picture might be, the colors, the contrast, but I don't really know what I'm looking at unless there's a description. And so again, assistive technology that has some AI built in it is helpful for us. But like I said in my post, can I use those generated words to pass them as my own in my fiction? The irony of it all is that they did this to kind of promote their new sponsor, that it's kind of AI editing software. And I went and looked it up, and the cost of it per month, I was like, so who's the classist? Because I much rather save up and pay a human editor when the time comes, instead of trying to use a monthly subscription that it's like $30 or something like that. When we transform US dollars to other currencies around the world, so who's the classist? So I was like, okay, so I'm blind, I'm from the global south. I am under the poverty line. So I have a lot of things against me as a writer. And yet I have a wonderful human editor, also from the global south, by the way. So you see, they were just caring about their sponsor, not really all the ways that are available for writers in difficult situations to overcome their obstacles and publish their books. Where are your actual efforts to platform actual disabled writers? Because I haven't seen that. It was very insulting. It was like, without AI, disabled people can't produce a quality work that stands alongside the work of non-disabled writers. That's kind of what they sounded.
That's how I came across. Which is awful. Yeah.
It is. And also they did purposefully say that AI is such an umbrella term that they cannot categorize, so they can or cannot endorse. Like they wanted to have the cake and eat it at the same time.
But like the whole point of NaNoWriMo was you're challenging yourself and others to write 50,000 words in a month. So, I mean, I could go on ChatGPT right now and say, like, write me 1,000 words about this, and then it could write me 1,000 words. I didn't write those 1,000 words. So how is that even accomplishing the challenge? And I'm not saying that NaNoWriMo said to do that, because they kept it vague on purpose. They didn't say, go and use a robot to generate the text of your book, but they left it open-ended enough that you could interpret it that way. And I think that that is irresponsible of them.
It is very irresponsible. The machine can be of great assistance in some parts. I am not against the use of, a virtual assistant or something, but there is a red line at plagiarism, and no one should ever cross that. And those poorly researched and poorly developed books where people think that they can just generate it and hit publish. I am one of those who would enjoy when the 1-star reviews on Goodreads appear. Enjoy the 1-star reviews because you didn't do the job, you didn't want to do the job, you didn't care, you just wanted to get rich quick. Well, there you go, get your 1 star.
Let's keep in mind that this is the same organization that just 5 years ago penalized Kat, a blind woman herself, because she couldn't visually access the website's formatting. And now, instead of ever addressing or apologizing for that, instead of ever actually doing anything active to speak out in favor of disability rights or address accessibility in any way, they just turn around and say, well, now that we have an AI sponsor, now we care about ableism because we can spin this to say that we're using AI for accessibility purposes and not specify beyond that and leave it vague that if you want to generate your novel with pro writing aid, who are we to stop you? They're paying us after all. Can we come back? What's really sad is that none of this is even remotely related to what NaNoWriMo is supposed to be about. NaNoWriMo as a concept is about challenging writers to write 50,000 words of their novel draft in 1 month. That's what it's about. It's the result of an organization growing too large and too greedy for its own good. So is there a way for the NaNoWriMo organization to come back from this? Is this the end of an era?
I don't think it's possible for it to come back at this point. It could have. I went and participated in a couple of discussion threads. One of them was the board Q&A thread after the board stepped in. When the board stepped in, if they had been forthcoming with information and been actually transparent, if they would have told us what they were doing and then actually followed through, then they probably could have brought it back.
Honestly, I've already put a lot of work into trying to like build my own community where I am. I don't see the point in going back.
I think Nano as like a writing challenge on its own, I think that'll survive no problem, because I think a lot of people were like you in a way where you just kind of started it by like hearing about it and then kind of did it on your own.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know there's a website. A lot of people don't know that there's forums.
I'm gonna get a cease and desist from Grant for using it in my YouTube vlog titles.
So the org, it's already down to like 2, maybe not even 2 employees, like 1 employee, and then Kilby's is like apparently not taking a salary. That's what she said anyway. I truly think that like this will be the last like official NaNoWriMo.
Basically, what I've gathered is NaNoWriMo, the organization, should just pack it up and go home. But NaNoWriMo, the concept, can and should live on. The global impact of NaNoWriMo isn't about how many shiny features exist on the forums or how many people sign up on the website or who takes advantage of what sponsorships. The impact is that people around the world have formed groups with fellow writers to encourage and support one another on their writing journeys. The impact is that people are writing more stories, and that impact is good. NaNoWriMo, the organization, doesn't need to exist for NaNoWriMo, the challenge, to exist. Most writers I talked to for this video have already formed their own local groups that they met, and they're just not registered with NaNoWriMo, the organization, anymore. They're just carrying on, separating themselves from official NaNoWriMo, and continuing to host their own local events and local writing groups, and continuing to participate in this challenge without NaNoWriMo as an organization being involved at all. There's no reason that we can't just continue to do this challenge without involving the people at HQ. Actually, that's what a lot of people, including me, have been doing all along. I know that I'll be writing a lot during the next few months. I have a YA novel that I'm making big additions to. I have 3 queer holiday romances that I'm hoping to release by Christmas. And I have this whole like American Girl doll, Barbie, Monster High doll themed RPG that I'm outlining as this fun creative side project. So I'm going to be working on all of those things. And yes, throughout the rest of the year, that is going to involve me challenging myself to write at least 50,000 words each month for the rest of the year. And I will be doing that the way I usually do, by attending AuthorTube live streams, by hanging out in people's chats, by sharing my word counts and progress with other writers, and forming small communities based on writer trust. I really want to know what you guys think about all of this and what happened. I think it's really sad and awful the way NaNoWriMo has handled everything. I think in the long run, the majority of writers are going to be fine without an organization needing to exist to run this challenge. I think we can all just do this challenge on our own. So let's just like keep writing, honestly. We can hold NaNoWriMo NaNoWriMo, the organization, accountable, and also keep writing and keep doing challenges that mean so much to us. That's at least my take on the situation, but I'm curious what you guys all think about this as well. Let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments below. I will see you guys again in a couple weeks for some more videos, but in the meantime, keep on writing, keep motivating and encouraging each other, and remember what the importance of creativity is all about, all right? Bye, friends!